this subject. It is like, what is it, 3? We've got about 8 or 9 hours until Bob Iger officially goes away from Disney and never comes back, which is like, we've got assholes putting old news out there about the Acolyte on Reddit, and it's like, why are you doing that? Anyway, so the boys at Midnight's Edge were talking about what makes a movie star. This is for Latino Slant, by the way. This is for Polly. And Polly and Tom had a little bit of a disagreement, but it's okay. And it was all in good fun. Tom's position is, without Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indy franchise and Star Wars, Harrison Ford would not be a movie star. I think that's what it is. All right, you couldn't be further than the truth. I notice a lot of people out there really have a bad attitude about him. I don't know why. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about this. I've talked about what a movie star is. All right, or was back in the day when we actually had them. And I'm going to say this. We do have movie stars. All right, still. But they're not Brad Pitt. They're not Leonardo DiCaprio. I call him that because I hate him. I think he's overrated little putz. It is not Johnny Depp, okay? It is not, Angelina Jolie. None of those people are movie stars. They're celebrities. There's a difference, okay? Well, the movie stars that are left are Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Meryl Streep, Mel Gibson, okay? I mean, I don't care what anyone says. The only time you ever really see him end up in the tabloids is when somebody who doesn't like him, which is every left-wing anti-Catholic bigot in Hollywood, which is like most of them, gets mad at him for something, okay? He's probably, in my opinion, the most talented filmmaker alive, okay? If you watch The Passion of the Christ, I don't care if you're an atheist, you walk away a different person, okay? You walk away a different person. That's the power of film, okay? And Mel is one of the most recognizable faces out there, all right? But let's talk about what makes a movie star. So, okay, Trayla. So let's talk about this, all right? Movie stars are an invention of the studio system, okay? Back in the 20s, there was Clara Bow, Mary Pickford, Lillian Gish, William Powell. I think he started in the 20s. Tom Mix, Harry Carey Sr. Hello, Lady Sandy. There were tons. All right, Rudolph Valentino. Oh God, the guy who plays Zorro, and I just had his name, and now I forgot it. But anyway, there were tons. Okay, Paulette Goddard, or no, was that Gloria Swanson? Gloria Swanson. Okay. Do you think the studios just let anything go with those guys? No, they didn't. They controlled every aspect of the publicity that was coming out. Okay, and if it was bad, they squashed it. I'm talking about old school. I'm not talking about Antonio Banderas. Okay, I'm talking about movie stars. I'm talking about the 1920s. Get with the program. When all this started, it started even before that. I mean, Charlie Chaplin was a movie star. Okay. The studio system wanted their people who are in front of the camera, who drew people to movies, to be above. There should be a separation between audience and the star. Okay. This is why they controlled fan mail to Clark Gable. This is why you had controlled interviews at their houses, like with Marlene Dietrich or Betty Davis or Vivian Lee. Okay, they were not only controlled by the movie studios, they were told to be this person that the audience wanted to be. Okay, Marilyn Monroe, a completely manufactured movie star. Norma Jean Baker, she was a model. She did some things and she got discovered. Okay. Lana Turner, the sweater girl, movie star, got herself into some serious issues when she dated a mobster named Johnny Stompanato, and the guy got into a fight with her one night, and her daughter Cheryl shot him to death. Okay, fucking mobster. Okay, we were really supposed to know that people like that dated people like that. Okay, we weren't supposed to know. These were our royalty. Clark Gable is royalty. When you have Judy Garland as a young girl, singing a song called Dear Mr. Gable, basically it's a 13-year-old girl writing a crush fan letter to a movie star. Okay, I did that. Okay, these were controlled images. All right, Bing Crosby, and it was very very easy for some of these guys to show up and be part of it. Bing Crosby was a devout Catholic. He was married to a woman named Dixie. Dixie was, I had thought one story about her, and then I find out that wasn't true. She died of, hey Dave, she died of cancer, and she'd been really in bad health, and their sons were just atrocious. Okay, they were being bad kids. They didn't know their mom was that sick. Bing didn't know. Okay, Bob Hope, movie star, always a movie star. There were guys that went along with it because they knew what the studio wanted. No, not him. God, 1920s, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. There were plenty of people who played Zorro. Okay, all right, okay. There are plenty, like way more than Antonio Banderas, and a lot better at the role. Okay, a lot better. But these guys had controlled images. Some said fine, some did not do well with that. You look at Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow walked around on the stage, on the sound stages that she worked on naked. Okay, she didn't care. She is a very, I'd say a very kind of sad woman, and her mother was just atrocious to her. And of course, we all know she died of kidney failure. Probably would have been, it was before antibiotics appeared, and one shot of penicillin would have saved her. And she was going to marry William Powell, who was devastated. Clark Gable went to her bedside and cried. Okay. These people, we didn't know that she did that. We didn't know. We didn't know, that Katherine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy were having an affair. Okay. We didn't know that. Okay. But the control and the distance, the distance between the audience, you and me, and the movie star up on the screen, or in the magazine, like there were so many, like Look magazine, and there were a lot of fan magazines out there. And what they did with those magazines is they put their best foot forward. Okay. They looked at the stars as a commodity. Mickey Rooney, a commodity. Judy Garland, definitely a commodity and treated like shit. Okay. Elizabeth Taylor rebelled against Louis B. Mayer. At one time, he was cussing out her mom. She told him to fuck off. Seriously. Okay. It's an interview, her only time she was ever on Johnny Carson, when she talked about that. To us, looking at her on the screen in the 40s and 50s, before she got into all the marriages and basically broke up Debbie Reynolds' marriage to the idiot Eddie Fisher, she was a goddess. Lauren Bacall, a goddess. Okay. That's what we thought. People would, and like, when you look at them, they all had their own look. Betty Davis was Betty Davis, and you knew who she was when you saw her. Marlene Dietrich, she had the eyebrows. She was always, photographed from above, so you could see that there's what she called her butterfly, the shadow of her nose. Paulette Goddard had a look. Hedy Lamarr had a look. Okay, they all had their own individual looks. Ida Lupino had her own look. Dorothy Lamour had her own look. It's very interesting, and William Powell had the slick back hair and the pencil mustache. And you had Clark Gable with his hair was slicked back, but it was thicker with the mustache. And then you had, Ronald Reagan shows up. Then you had William Holden. Then you have John Wayne, who doesn't follow that at all. He was just this big, magnetic, charismatic, extremely alpha male guy, okay, who literally, when he walked onto the screen, everybody else faded in the background. Everybody. Jimmy Stewart. Okay, it was a little bit easier for the guys to attain themselves, okay, but they were told this is who we want the audience to see, okay. Katherine Hepburn, athletic, not exactly the most beautiful woman in Hollywood, but she was easily probably one of the best actresses. Okay, she had her own look. Okay, there's a movie called The Women, 1939. All right, I'm gonna tell you guys something. 1939 is probably one of the biggest years for movies ever. Let's talk about the movies that came out. The Women, The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. Okay? Just to say a few, all right? The Women had Norma Shearer, who is, I think, one of the greatest actresses of all time. She came up in the 20s, very, before the Hayes Act. Her husband actually was Irving Thalberg, who was one of the instrumental people that built MGM and one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And he was part of the commission that put the Hayes Act together. Okay. Did Casablanca come out in 1939? I don't think it did. I think it was 1940. Anyway, so she was married to Irving Thalberg. I actually think it came out when he died, because he died very young of heart disease. You had Rosalind Russell, huge movie star. I have a few others. And, God, what's her name? Shit, no more wire hangers. I hate this. This is what happens when you get into your 50s. It's like you see the face and you can't remember the name. The name is on the tip of your tongue. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford played a vamp in this movie. But it's about women leaving their husbands over cheating. Okay. Very risque conversation for a movie to be having in 1939. And this is after the Hayes Act. But that movie was a big hit. Okay. Okay, thanks. Joan Crawford, yep. Because I remembered her creepy daughter's name. Boy, that's an interesting little turn of events too, by the way. So they're in this movie. You got Judy Garland, Wizard of Oz. Then you've got Gone with the Wind. The biggest male movie star, Clark Gable, Vivian Leigh. There you go. Okay. Every one of those people were basically created. Those names were created by the studios. Joan Crawford's name is not her real name. She's got a very French name. You've got, Myrna Loy and Claudette Colbert and got Carol Lombard, who was the love of Clark Gable's life. She died late 1941 in a plane accident coming back from a bond drive with her mom. The plane crashed in the mountains, and it broke Gable's heart. It really, really did. He was never the same guy after that. Okay, Humphrey Bogart, for Christ's sakes. Okay, don't forget him. Edward G. Robinson, Jimmy Cagney, you name it, all these great, but I'll get to her, but they were not who we thought they were. We were supposed to think they were above us, okay? And that, in some ways, tells me that maybe it should be that way, okay? There's something about protecting an image, not just because you want to make money, but you don't want to ruin people's perception, because the world's already a shitty place. Okay, so we get into the 50s and 60s. Elizabeth Taylor, the whole Eddie Fisher bullshit, and then she, starts screwing around with Richard Burton. And then the swinging 60s where it's a little more looser, where there's a little more this with everybody. But and the movie stars are changing. Dustin Hoffman appears, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Redford, who back in his day was actually a movie star, but they started taking themselves too fucking seriously. Okay, Robert Redford, if he wasn't political, probably would be up there with Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford just skims the surface. I know he's a Democrat. I know he used to be friends with Bill Clinton, or still is, I don't know. But he never went out of his way to piss off half the country. All right? Part of that is he's not like that. He just doesn't want to do that. And he's too cool to do that because he understands that not everybody's alike. Okay? And considering his involvement with historical aircraft restoration and the guys involved, I guarantee you, a lot of those guys that he works with in that are Trump supporters. And he knows that. Okay? He knows that. But we get into the 70s, and there's still the movie star thing going on. Clint Eastwood is a big presence. But really, and Sylvester Stallone gets his chance. But really, when you get right down to it, there really wasn't that many of these people we can look at. And the reason why is because the studio system died. The Screen Actors Guild came along and basically ended those kinds of contracts. Harrison Ford came in to Hollywood being somebody who was contracted to studios. Okay? So if you can watch Gunsmoke, you can watch Kung Fu. He was in quite a few TV shows, okay, as a bit player. Okay. He was in a movie called The Conversation. He was in American Graffiti. He gets the role of Han Solo. Then he starts getting noticed. Okay. He makes a movie called Hanover Street. Some people didn't like it. I liked it. It gave him a chance to actually show his romantic persona that made, women swoon. Okay. He made a movie called The Frisco Kid with Gene Wilder. Some people didn't like that. I think it's funny as hell. A rabbi and a gunfighter go across the Old West to San Francisco. I mean, that line is like, what? And it's hilarious. Then The Empire Strikes Back came out, and it solidified him as a solid, romantic leading man. Not necessarily a movie star yet, but he basically kicked in the door to that path. Okay? He got the role of Indiana Jones after Tom Selleck, who looked like the matinee idol that George Lucas wanted for that role, had to bow out because of Magnum PI. All right? He got the role of Indiana Jones because Steven Spielberg said, "What about Harrison Ford?" And George Lucas finally said, "Okay, well, we'll see." And Ford got the role. And again, the reason why he got the role is because he owned that role, just like he owned Han Solo. There are roles that define actors. The roles that define John Wayne are Sergeant Stryker in The Sands of Iwo Jima, Ethan in The Searchers, Sean Thornton in The Quiet Man, and Rooster Cogburn in True Grit. Okay, and you name it. Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry. Okay, that's it, Dirty Harry. Harrison Ford, Han Solo first, Indiana Jones second. And because of him playing Han Solo, he got the movie Blade Runner, which, came out and people were like, what the hell is this? And it ends up being a cult classic and truly actually successful in the secondary market. Okay. And he got a role in a movie called Witness. Okay. You get the romantic leading man who also has to act. And he kicked ass in that movie. Then there was Frantic and Presumed Innocent, which is a great movie. Frantic made me not want to go to Paris. I was like, oh, I fucking want to go there. There was Working Girl, who he came in the last minute. They needed somebody like that. And, Alec Baldwin was in it, very young actor at the time. And Harrison Ford just owns it, just the moment he shows up. And it's a fun movie to watch. And it was fairly successful. All right. Let's talk about the 90s. Okay. 90s, The Fugitive. We've got The Devil's Own, which was a good movie, but very controversial. We've got Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger. We've got, Regarding Henry. Another movie that was really, really good, that he freaking kicked ass in that, and Hollywood was like, I'm like, fuck you to those guys. Then we had What Lies Beneath. And he's playing against type, like he did in another movie from the 80s, Mosquito Coast. Okay? Mosquito Coast, he played an absolute batshit crazy lunatic. And the first opening scene, when you see him, you're like, where's Harrison? What happened to him? And in What Lies Beneath, he plays a scary dude. I mean, he scares the shit. I mean, it's creepy. Okay, it's just fucking, what the fuck is wrong? And then we get into the 2000s, and, let's put it this way. This is when the scripts were drying up for people. And Cowboys and Aliens, which is directed by Jon Favreau, and produced, at least executive produced. Oh, Air Force One was great. I love that movie. There's a funny story that with Gary Oldman, who's one of my favorite people. Gary Oldman also belongs to a right-wing group of Brits in Hollywood. Gary Oldman likes to tell his story. He's sitting there in a chair and he looks over and he sees a sign. No smoking, no drinks, no eating on set. Underneath the sign, smoking a cigar, eating a burrito, and drinking a cup of coffee is Harrison Ford. Like, I'm the star. What are you going to do to me? I mean, I mean, that's him. He doesn't care. So you get to the 2000s, and he's still relevant. They make Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I personally liked. It did have problems, but just for a movie just to throw on and just kind of have on, it's not. It's a good movie. I don't have any problems with it. And then we get to now, and he's still relevant. Okay, so what makes him a movie star? Well, when I was a kid, I had this magazine, and I just found it again. And this is August of 1980. It's a Tiger Beat. So it's Luke Skywalker and Han Solo against Bo and Luke Duke. What? Teenage Girls Read. This is basically the evolution of the fan magazine that my mom and my sisters gushed over. You know, Frank Sinatra and another movie star, and Clark Gable and William Holden and whoever. But this is where they are. Harrison Ford has had 5 Vanity Fair covers, or at least 3 that I know of. 5 if you count the group shots. And that was a measure of the power of the image of the man. It is a measure of what Hollywood really thought of him in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember our cable magazine, the picture of him that I used as a thumbnail. Our cable magazine, our cable guide, had a picture kind of like that. And I remember saving it. And just, I would save everything. I wish I had all of it. Posters Raiders of the Lost Ark. I had a poster of The Empire Strikes Back. Tiger Beat, and there's a Teen Beat. But we read all of it, And you know what team I was on? I was on Team Solo. The rest of them, I mean, And when you think about what got him to where he got, it's because of Star Wars, okay? It's because of Star Wars. And the moment people saw that Han Solo was going to play Indiana Jones, they were probably very intrigued. Now, did they go to the movie because of him? I did, but I also did because of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Okay. All of this goes that this is a different Hollywood than from when John Ford was directing during the studio system, where, back in the 20s, he would get a script and they would say, film this. And he would go out to Monument Valley and film a movie and come back. And sometimes he wouldn't film the whole script because it was too long and would cost too much. Okay. But that's how they did it. Now, and in the 80s, writers had to come up with a script and then sell it to a studio or to someone's production company. And it's very interesting to me watching all this unfold and seeing where, because he wasn't necessarily going to be a movie star. I mean, he was what, 30? All right, Star Wars was made in 76, 75. He had just turned 30 in 1972. Okay, he should have been a movie star back in the 60s. But again, you have this ethnic, I think, the idea of the movie star was changing. You got Richard Dreyfuss, whom I like. He's intellectually one of the most honest people that I've ever seen. And you got Dustin Hoffman. You've got Al Pacino. You've got Robert De Niro, who I think is a total fucking asshole, coming in. They're not the tall, cinematically beautiful, masculine man. Okay, white man. But the only one in that bunch would probably be Robert Redford. And even then, I'm like, I mean, there's a movie called not The Longest Day. It's called A Bridge Too Far, and it's about uh, the failed Operation Market Garden that they landed. That the United States, 101st Airborne, 101st, I think it was both the 82nd and the 101st, and British paratroopers and Free French and everybody and Polish paratroopers landed to take these bridges over the Rhine River, okay, in Holland, okay, and it was failed. They failed. They didn't. It was Monty's idea, General Field Marshal Montgomery, duh, and we said, okay, fine. Politically, we had to do this, okay. So Ike says, fine, do it. They do it. They fail. The guy who wrote the book, The Longest Day, wrote A Bridge Too Far. A Bridge Too Far is a reference to something one of the generals said at the end of the battle. Okay. They landed a bunch of paratroops in the middle of an SS Panzer Division. Oh, okay. Not a good thing. And there were a lot. Sean Connery, movie star. I forgot about him. He was in it. Gene Hackman. Let's see, Ryan O'Neal, who was a big name back in the 70s. Terrible. Robert Redford was horrible. He's paddling across the Rhine in his little raft, shrieking Hail Marys. And it's like, dude, you sound about as devout as my dog taking a dump right now. Okay, just please, just don't say anything. They're all portraying actual guys the guys that did that. You got Elliot Gould playing a colonel. He looks so wrong in this movie. But these huge actors show up with this and in this movie. And it's very interesting seeing how many people were the celebrity thing was already coming in. Okay. All right. The celebrity was already thing was coming in. Ryan O'Neal really never amounted to anything. Okay. Robert Redford was already kind of at the apex of his stuff, and he started going behind the camera. And on and on and on and on and on. The only actors, I think Michael Caine was in that. There's a guy I would consider a movie star. Okay? Movie stars are not like us. We don't need to know everything about them. Okay? Tabloid press in the 70s and 80s with the Inquirer and all the rest of the Star magazine and all the rest of that shit started putting this in there. When you look at Star magazine, you can see that Christopher Lee was a star, but not quite up there with Sean Connery. Not up there with Michael Caine. I mean, Michael Caine, when you saw his name on something, you went, oh my God, look at that cast. But let's go back. They started going into the stars' lives, and lots of PR people for stars use Us Magazine and People Magazine to tell a story. The story the star wants out. Like if you see something ripping Angelina Jolie, that's probably not coming from Brad. It could be coming from the plethora of bitches who hate her guts. Most likely Jennifer Aniston, who's queen of the celebrities. Okay, all right. So you see that stuff. Okay, this is not what movie stars do, and the studios wouldn't allow it. Okay, back then. Makes Harrison Ford a movie star is this. He never found himself in a situation where it would end up in Star. I don't honestly think that I've ever actually seen a headline about him in Star magazine or one of those, what was it, Us magazine, where it was bad. I don't think I've ever seen one. He doesn't come across that way. There's still this distance between what we see and who he really is, and that is fine. That is what makes a movie star. It's not necessarily the box office. It's name recognition. It's dare I say, the brand, his brand. Okay, you know, they all have it. Okay, Sylvester Stallone is a brand. Clint Eastwood is a brand, you better believe it. Harrison Ford is a brand. Okay. That is a movie star. Clark Gable was. John Wayne was. Okay. Humphrey Bogart was. Jimmy Cagney was. Okay. They all were. There was something about them. I mean, even Frank Sinatra. For crying out loud. If you walked into let's say like a club in New York or a lovely restaurant, and he was there, everybody's looking. Not because he's a celebrity, but he's fucking Frank Sinatra. Same thing with Dean Martin, okay? People would see him at, you know, his restaurant that he owned in LA and other people's and just go, not because he was a celebrity, he was fucking Dean Martin, okay? That's the thing. Hey, Maze, you know, and nowadays, you know, you see Brad Pitt and it's like, oh, fucking who cares? Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes, I said DiCaprio. Who cares? Jack Nicholson. I don't care. I could be sitting next to him at the next table and I'd be like, you know, because they don't intrigue me. They don't make me want to know who they really are. This guy right here, yeah, and still that way. Why? Because he doesn't go on the Tonight Show talking about his personal life. He doesn't let his personal life get out there in the tabloids. And what it does remains a mystery. The only thing we know of for sure that got out there was when Carrie wrote about their affair, at least part one of it, because I'm sure it went on longer. And a Princess Diarist, okay? You know, when you hear people talk about them when they were filming The Empire Strikes Back, I mean, Mark Hamill talked, who can't keep his mouth shut for any, you know, for any reason, talked about the time that Harrison was really pissed off and upset about something. He grabbed a saw and started sawing apart the Millennium Falcon during the making of The Empire Strikes Back. Mark said, I don't know why they asked me to do this. They wanted me to tell him to stop and to get him to stop. He was with Carrie at the time. This is Mark Hamill saying, I didn't know they had an affair. He was with Carrie at the time. What the fuck are you talking about? You didn't know and then you said this. Okay, that's an indication. Peter Mayhew saying, everybody knew, you know, on set. So it's not like, you know, that's the only thing that in stuff like that did come out. Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, they couldn't keep that quiet. They couldn't. I mean, she was what, 20 years old and he was 46? You know, and I'm going to say this, I have no problem with that. She's over 18, go with God. If that's what you want, have fun. Because when I was 20 years old, if I'd had a chance at Harrison Ford, I'd have gone after him. I would have gone after him. It's just the way it is. Some girls like actual grown-up men, okay? And I'm sorry, but when the pickings are Tom Cruise, who's that big, and a young baby-faced Brad Pitt, I mean, I did like Patrick Swayze, but still, it's like, you know, I'm just not that kind of girl. I don't like little boys. Never have. And obviously Lauren Bacall didn't either. But they couldn't keep that quiet. They couldn't keep, I mean, you know, but I'll tell you something. The rumors about, okay, another movie star, or at least for a while was, Rock Hudson. I could see him on a movie even as a little kid and say, that guy's gay. There's something different about him. Came out that he was gay. I'm like, who knew? My mom knew. The reason why she knew is because the guy that used to do her hair, a Lebanese guy whose parents immigrated to La Crosse, his brother was a stylist in Las Vegas and knew everything. He would tell Joe, who would tell my mom. Okay, so, you know, it's just, you know, that, but there are always stories out there about him. Like, here's a story. Everybody in Hollywood knew about Rock Hudson, but it didn't bother a few of them. John Wayne, for instance, there was a movie that he wanted to make. Rock Hudson was dying for one of the parts, and the studio's like, no, we don't want him. And John Wayne said, I'm not making it unless he's in the movie. You know, so whatever you think of John Wayne, the idea that he was homophobic or racist is wrong. And it goes to but that's something, yeah, the undefeated. It goes to something about the man we didn't know. Yeah, but it's really funny, John, is that she and Elizabeth Taylor ended up being really good friends. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor hung out with them all the time after a while. It's just, you know, Eddie was the one in the wrong. He really was the one in the wrong. And, you know, Liz met Richard Burton. Liz was like, bye, you know. And that happened. I mean, I think Liz had terrible taste in men. Horrible. But I also think Debbie Reynolds did too. But if that's all you've got around you, I mean, Richard Burton, they were madly in love with each other to the point where they couldn't live together. Okay. He wrote her a letter, Liz Taylor, a letter that she never let anybody see. And I think she was buried with it. Okay. He loved her to the day he died. They just couldn't live together because he was, you know, but they were both movie stars. But the scandal started coming out. So you see this celebrity culture starting to form. Okay. Had all that stuff happened, and it did in the 30s and 20s and whatever, had all that stuff happened back in the day, we probably would not have known what broke up Debbie and Eddie, or they would have fixed it. Because Louis B. Mayer, Jack Warner, Daryl F. Zanuck, or whoever would have said, look, this is gonna fuck up my bottom line. Okay? I can't have these people behaving this way and it getting out to the public. John Q. Public is not going to appreciate this shit. This bed hopping, you know, behavior. And it was rife in Hollywood. Rife, but they controlled the message. Now they don't, and we get Brad and Angelina. We get, you know, we get to hear about all kinds of shitty behavior of people. And it brings to the point where it's like nauseating. The Kardashians, they're not famous because they're talented. They're famous because they have all their dirty fucking laundry out in the public. And that is cynical. It is morbid. And it is, I think it's toxic and evil, to be honest. There's nothing about them that should allow them to be part of that culture in the Hollywood hierarchy. You know, and it's not sausage making. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. But again, like I said, when you read the books about what happened back in the 20s, It was the same way back then. I mean, Tallulah Bankhead was one of the most vile, disgusting females I have ever read about, heard about, seen, whatever, in my life. Terrible woman. Okay, terrible. And a drug addict and just, loose, trashy female. There's nothing classy about her. But we didn't know that. No one knew about Marlene and Dietrich not being able to decide which side of the bread or to butter. Okay, we didn't know anything about Greta Garbo. We thought she was with. I think she made a lot. Didn't she make movies with William Powell? I can't remember. We didn't know about her either. We didn't know about a lot of them. Okay, and that was fine. It protected the studio's bottom line. It protected the public, and it basically protected the character of the country. Now we got reality TV. I mean, Kevin, yeah, you're right. I mean, Kevin Spacey is an example of bad behavior that no one could control, that people finally said, we're done, we're sick of him. And they wanted to get rid of him. I mean, he molested Richard Dreyfuss's son back in the mid 80s. Did you guys know that? Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss is like, I had no idea that happened. I had no idea. Kevin was just a guy that was trying to catch a break in New York. Dreyfuss was trying to help him. There you go. Okay. So anyway, but I want to talk a little bit about what makes a movie star and what gets a person noticed. Harrison Ford is probably the last of the guys out there who, I agree, Maze, I agree totally, who literally captured the public's imagination in the 80s because he fit that role of the hero in over his head, but he had that masculine, genuine alpha quality in a different way than John Wayne, in a different way than Clint Eastwood. But again, Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford. You can't cookie cutter, guys. You can't cookie cutter that. Okay. He brought a different version of it, and people responded to it. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, I don't care about Eddie Murphy. I never liked the guy. I went to see Beverly Hills Cop because I thought it was going to be a funny movie, and it was, but he's not one of my favorite people. I don't look at him as being somebody to admire. Yeah, Just Nova, you're right. He's gotten himself into some trouble for weird shit. Ford was the biggest box office star of all time. If you take away inflation, if you look at inflation, nobody would ever be able to touch that. Just like, White Christmas is the biggest selling single of all time. Just like the Bible is the biggest selling book of all time. Just like Gone with the Wind is still the #1 movie of all time when you reset it for inflation. Yeah, I think you're right on that one too. And there are people out there who want to have that, to take that up that niche of the badass everyman who, when called upon, actually goes out and defends himself and his family. But it's very interesting to me when I look at that and I think, okay, that's fine, but you're not believable. Again, the thing that made Harrison Ford believable is everything he did till he got successful. Okay, he worked his ass off as a bit player. He was a carpenter. Okay, he worked his ass off. Something about actual labor like that. I mean, you look at his hands. Stands him apart from Ben, I'm a spoiled rotten brat from Chestnut Hill, Boston. It stands apart from that. Ben Affleck can't do it because Ben Affleck never lived that life. And it translates onto the screen big time. Anyway, I gotta rock. You guys have a really good afternoon, and I think I might do a live New Year's Eve celebration, celebrating the last 15 minutes of Bob Iger's administration at Disney. So I will probably be quite drunk at the time. All right, see you guys later. See you around the galaxy.